Welcome back to the Ignore the Tablet podcast, the only FPL podcast on the entire internet hosted by me. And no, the pause at the beginning of this podcast was not for dramatic effect. That was just the look I get when I am anticipating more pain to come ahead of Gameweek 28, because it's not looking good. So to help guide the situation and provide context of where I'm at, let's just jump straight into looking at my team, and then we can kind of use it as a vehicle to move the episode forward into what on earth I'm going to do. Because I think whatever I end up doing, it's going to be the wrong decision. Not just because I've been getting lots of red arrows in a row, but it's just, there's not a lot of obvious choices. I've got the blank game week 31 thing to contend with. It's overall just not a good situation. I wonder if a lot of people are in the same position as me. Probably not as bad, but maybe to some extent you'll be able to resonate. So let's look at my team first, and then we'll start going through some players that might not be in the meta that I might be able to bring your attention to. So here is my team in a nutshell for your viewing pleasure. And we have some issues. So just to run through the team really quick, I've got David Raya in goal, Dubravka on the bench. In defense, I've got Gabriel, Mukiele, Senesi, Gehi, and Tarkovsky. In midfield, Mbumo, Bruno Fernandes, Enzo Fernandez, Ismail Assar, Declan Rice. And in the forward line, Erling Haaland, Thiago, and Obi. So here's the issue. We may or may not have a blank game week 31, depending on how the fixtures break down. If we are to assume that is going to be a true blank game week, I will not have David Raya, so that's 1. Gabriel, that's 2. Gehi, Ismail Assar, Rice, Haaland, and I won't have Obi. So that's 7 players. Technically 1 I could cover because I could bench Raya and put Dubravka in. That's not a big deal. So let's call it 6. I've got 1 transfer this week. Then 29, 30, 31 will be another 3 potentially. So 4 transfers overall to sub out, to remove players that are not going to play. So this is what I'm contending with. And basically that means that even though I'm not loving Enzo Fernandez's form, I don't love his fixtures. I've got Mukiele who's hurt. I really can't move those players. So I'm in a position where, because I have, what did I say? Like 6 transfers, or no, 5 transfers, and I need to move 4 of my players. I don't have any wiggle room really. 1 extra transfer, but as we have seen, I've gotten 1 injury in the past 2 weeks each. So last week Lacroix went down. This week Mukiele went down. If I keep acquiring these injuries, it's really no wiggle room. So hopefully your situation is not as bad as this, and you had more forethought into what your team would look like going into the blank, or maybe you already have a plan for that. But let's just take my scenario as the potential, not worst case scenario, but it's a pretty rotten situation. And to fully go into this, let's look at the team. Let's see the most optimal situation. If before we make any transfers, what is the best team I could possibly make? Because already it looks pretty bad. Let's be honest. Like, I don't want to be starting Enzo. Gehi would be in. Mukiele would have to be out. Obviously, he is injured. I don't want to play Tarkovsky. Obi's not going to get any minutes. Dubravka, I may be playing over Raya this week. We'll look at that, look at the stats and how that's informed. But I did take a peek, and the algorithm / the data model that provides projected points for the next match, Dubravka is projected to get more points than Raya based on the fixture difficulty rating, which isn't everything. So who knows? But right now, I think this is the most ideal before transfers situation that I have. I've got Dubravka in goal, Gabriel, Gehi, Senesi, Mbumo, Enzo, Bruno, Ismail Assar, Rice, Holland, Thiago. So Sar, I could potentially move. That would be one. And that would be a player that takes care of the issue in the blank. So he has to go at some point, because the players that I'm going to keep on my bench are almost certainly going to be Gabriel, Gehi, and Holland. Which means that the two players that would have to go are Ismail Assar and Rice. So if I move Sar on, that would be an option. I could also move Declan Rice on. His fixture's not great either. Ideally, I would move both of them this week, or I would have better bench cover to bench Sar or Rice, because I think their fixtures aren't bad coming up. Spurs next, Leeds, Newcastle, or well, really only Leeds, because they've got the blank, and I'm probably going to wild card in 32, which means he's probably not going to be in the picture. The Leeds at home fixture would be something I would prefer to have him in. And for Rice, their fixtures aren't great. Brighton away is not good. Everton at home's pretty good. And then the wild card doesn't really matter after that. This Chelsea home fixture is probably the worst one. Let's be real. So I think for my team, and you may be in a similar position, but for my team, I think I can go one of three ways. I think I could either move Sar for a midfielder, Rice for a midfielder, or I swap Obi out for Krupi Jr. Or someone else. I mean, I've got 2.4 million in the bank. Maybe this is the time I go from, 4.2 to like a 6 million forward. Not ideal, but we'll take a look and see what kind of forwards would be in that option. Or just Krupi Jr. They've got pretty good fixtures. Sunderland at home, Brentford at home, Burnley away, and Man United at home. And then I would wild card. So I like that stretch of 4 fixtures for them. So that would be an option. Then I would just bench Sar or Rice or Enzo and keep them for the good fixtures, or for the Leeds at least, for Sar, and for Rice, maybe for Everton, I guess. But I think I have one free transfer. I think I pretty much have to use it. So those are the problem players for me. And almost certainly one of Obi, Sar, or Rice will be sold this week, I think. I wish I had a more clear idea of what I wanted to do. Hopefully the stats will help provide a good idea that I can latch onto. But on my first glance, it wasn't looking that great. And speaking of the Airtable, where all the stats are housed, that is up to date. And if you go to projected points, which, we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. But if you go to projected points, some of the players are going to look a little bit lower than they may, but that's because of the blank. So we're anticipating a blank for City, Arsenal, Crystal Palace, and Wolves. Brain aneurysm. It's been a long week. So those players will basically have one match from their projected points taken out because they don't play that week. So that's how that works. Let's take a look at the stats. Is there a midfielder or a forward in the budget that I would bring in this week? I hope, please. So here are all of the data. This is basically exactly what is available on the Airtable. All the numbers will be the same. However, I am just using the Excel spoof, aka only Office version of, I think it's like Sheets or something like that, just so I can color code it, make it a little bit user friendly for being able to view it on YouTube if you're watching that way. But if you're not on YouTube, just listening at home, just imagine you're on the Airtable and we have the entire spreadsheet open. We've got matches played filtered so that it's only 10 matches and above. We want to cut out those lower match players that, it's kind of a bit of a too small of a sample size. I think 10 is probably fine at this point in the season. And I've got certain players highlighted depending on if they're in my team or if they're potentially an option. So let's just go straight to midfielders, because that was, we're on midfielders already. Let's also select forward. So we are going to filter by forwards and midfielders only, because we may be taking a look at some that might be affordable. I don't think there's going to be an affordable forward that's not Krupi Jr. in my budget. And I am sorting by, in descending order, projected points by the underlying data. So across the next 5, who is projected to have the most points by the underlying data model. So based on how much XG and XA they accumulate on a per match basis, weighted by the fixture difficulty rating of the next 5 fixtures. So at the top of the list is a player I have, Thiago. So very happy about that. Haaland would obviously be above him because he's got a higher points per match by 1.5 points. However, he's got 1 fewer matches because of the blank. So that explains that. And then second on the list, Mohamed Salah. So that would be a great option if I had the money. Unfortunately, I do not. He's 14 million. I've got 2.4 million in the bank. The players that I basically can only sell are Ismail Assar and Declan Rice. So you can do the math. It's not going to add up. So that's not an option. However, we've got Haaland's obviously 3rd and Bruno Fernandes is 4th. So already have them in the bank. Players that I do not have that might be an option. Ekitike, 8.9 million forward. However, I can only sell Obi, which means I would have to take a hit to arrange that. Not going to be ideal. Verts, on the other hand, while he wasn't able to play last week, he has been supposedly back in training. This is an option. So I could easily go from Declan Rice or Ismail Assar to Florian Wirtz. They've got good fixtures. I could also go to Gakpo or Szoboszlai. Pick your poison. I don't love either of those options, especially if Szoboszlai is going to be playing right back. So those are some good midfield options. I think taking a look down this list, I don't know if I want to go too far down, because I've only got 6 point something million. Yeah, I've got 2.4 in the bank, and OB is 4.2. So yeah, 6.6 million. Maths. Let's just, this is all over the place, but let's just only look at forwards and just see if we can completely cut them out of the equation. Is there a 6.6 million forward that I would want that has a good projected points? This is going to be Raul Jimenez. Do I want to go for Raul Jimenez? Almost certainly not. Despite the cheap price, and while he's been in pretty good form and he was taking penalties, I just don't trust that in the long term. I think he's in really good form. I guess he has played almost every single match. Am I looking at this right? Yeah, he's played 26 matches. The minutes is not ideal. See, if you look at comparable, right above him, Watkins, they played the same exact number of matches, but he's played 200 minutes fewer. So not great, obviously. Although I guess he has more minutes. No, he doesn't have. I thought he almost had more minutes than João Pedro, but that's not how math works. Okay. Elsewhere, we've got not Declan Rice, Calvert-Lewin. How are the Leeds fixtures? So looking at fixture difficulty rating, this might be able to help me provide myself with some insight. Leeds have the 12th hardest fixtures according to the expected goal difference through the next 5. Fulham are 2nd, so they actually have some pretty good fixtures. Would I be going for Raul Jimenez as a 4-week punt, a 3-week punt? I don't actually, I'm potentially warming to that. So let's highlight Raul. And we're going to put him in purple because that's just how I like it. So Jimenez is a potential option for swap from Obi. No, those are not affordable. 6.1. Danny Welbeck, absolutely not. Who is the 6? Richarlison, no. Fleming, no. Mecha, no. Wilson, no. And then I could just really tank the spot and go for like a Mane, but he doesn't have a fixture in Game Week 31, or a Krupi Jr., who will have a fixture in 31. That would allow me to play with the money a little bit more because Verts is potentially an option for like instead of Rice. It would have to be between, yeah. I'm going back on my Raul potential flirtation, and I just think Krupi Jr., just keep that spot really low. There's not good value in forwards. Like if we're looking at the VAPM by the underlying data and by the observed data for Raul, 0.31. Usually it's like 0.4 and above is really good, especially for somebody cheap. Like for somebody who's a premium, that's fine because you spend that money not because they're a cheap, good value option, is because you're going to captain them most weeks. So Erling Haaland has a higher VAPM, which is a phrase I haven't said in a while because value is dead per one of my previous episodes because they fucked up the pricing essentially of the game. And that means you can pretty much afford anybody, and that's why VAPM doesn't really matter. But if we are looking at, because now money is somewhat tight because of the situation I put myself in, Raul is not a high value player, but for a 4-week punt, 3-week punt, maybe. We'll come back to it. Let's take a look now. Let's just basically the forward options, I think solidified in my mind. It has to either be Raul or it has to be Krupi Jr. I can't afford Ekitike. He would be probably a better option, but yeah, I just don't love either of the forward options, but I think it has to be narrowed down to Raul or Krupi, depending on where I may want to go with the midfielders. Okay. Now back to midfielders. We can kind of spend all of our time here because I think there's definitely more options than in the forward line because as we saw, the forward line was complete garbage and I was propping up Raul. Okay, back to midfielders. Verts is not bad. 4.66 points per match by the underlying data. By the observed data, 4 points per match. Ouattara Dango, kind of outperforming him. By the underlying data, no, but by the observed data, slightly. And he's a lot cheaper. Not that money even really matters at this point because it's really just a 4-week punt. But the fixtures are slightly better for Liverpool. I actually didn't realize. So Liverpool, by the expected goal difference, have the best fixtures across the next 5. But Verts also has the slight injury issue. Okay, we're going to table that for a second. Dango, I think, is a good option. Between Anderson. It's not sexy, is it? He's going to get like 5 points at a cap. Although he has been getting 4.5 points per match on average by the underlying data and by the observed data as well. So that's, yeah, you can pretty much guarantee yourself to get between 3 and 5 points with Anderson. But I want to shoot a little higher. I want to do something a little bit more sexy than that. Bruno G, I think, is injured, so that's a no. Palmer, I can't afford. Shada, I'd rather just go for Dango, I think. Gibbs White, again, not sexy. Wilson, I've seen a lot of clamor for Wilson. I know their fixtures are good, but by the underlying data, fewer than 4 points per match. By the observed data, almost 5. So he's massively overperforming. And even like when we're looking at observed points per match, he's not that much more than what Dango has been able to get. It's just kind of been a timing issue because Wilson got all of his points within like a 5-week span when he was hitting bangers in every single week, but hasn't really done much else otherwise. So do I put faith in that the underlying data, or that the observed data will regress towards the underlying data? The mathematician would say yes. Over a larger sample size, they're going to like get closer to each other. But the FPL player would probably go for Wilson. And I don't think I can go there personally. I just don't think he's that good of an FPL asset. I hate to say it. He's been very popular and they've got good fixtures, and I could speak endlessly on Wilson for positive or for negative, but I think it's just not a move that I would make. I think if you are more leaning towards what players have been able to do on the pitch, and maybe he is just a phenomenal finisher that's going to continue to outperform his underlying data, go for Wilson. That's a good option. But he's very kind of like a Rodgers, and now a lot of people are not so hot on Rodgers, and even Rodgers has better underlying data. Like his underlying data suggests he should be getting about 4 points per match. Observed data, he's about 4.7. So you can see Rodgers was on quite a run, and now that he's kind of regressed a little bit closer to his underlying data, people are trying to sell him. I know they've got a good fixture next. They play Wolves, I believe, but across the next 5, they are ranked 8th, so their fixtures are kind of middling. I think if I were to make the move and get rid of Rice or Sarr, I'd rather shoot a little bit higher than that. So for me, personally, I think it is between Dango and Verts. For the wider audience, I think anybody, like really there's a lot of bad players on this list. There's so many bad FPL players this season. I'd probably cap it here, which for those just listening, I selected Ismail Sarr, and I think Sarr and up for that expected point per match and above, or I guess projected point per match. You probably want a player who is projected to get at least 20 points per match across the next 5. Obviously with Sarr and Rice, they're down a match, so they'll probably, like if they were to play in 31 and that blank wasn't a blank, that is going to shoot right up to this level, which is probably around like Enzo, Dango, and Mbumo. But assuming they don't have a match, we're going to have to deal with it. I swear I thought if I would just ramble long enough, I would come to a decision, but I'm not feeling very good about the decision this week. This is probably going to be a game time decision. I'm probably not going to make the transfer tonight. I am recording this on Thursday, 9:14 p.m. current time of recording. I think I'm just going to wait up until the deadline, and hopefully some news comes out that like makes it obvious of who to go for, because I just don't love the options. If we had more concrete information about the blanks and the doubles, that would make it a lot easier to decide, because hey, if Sarr has a fixture in 31, which I think is pretty unlikely, I'd just keep him. I wouldn't have to worry about it. Yeah, Manchester United away is not a great fixture, especially given how they've been playing, but it's not a bad fixture. And around that, their fixtures aren't bad. So, their ranking in terms of the fixture difficulty rating across the next 5 is terrible because they're down a match. Same with Arsenal. That's why they're 20th. They're out of 20. So if you are like me and you have no idea what you're going to do this week, it's probably just best to roll. I think I'm in a position where I kind of have to make a transfer just because my my bench is so bad and they're already having to cover an injured player, I feel like I have to do something. And maybe that's the wrong way to look at it. Maybe I should just roll, because that's probably the best thing to do if I don't exactly know what I want to do. I want to go Rice to Verts. I think that's where I'm leaning at the moment, but let's look at the fixtures really quick, just to give a little bit more background to the situation. Alrighty, so here we are on Fantasy Football Hub. This is not a paid promotion. I get nothing from this. I make no money from this podcast in general, but I am on the fantasyfootballhub.co.uk website. I'm looking at their fixture tracker because they have some, I guess, like guesswork for the blanks. So if you're looking at the fixture difficulty rating across, 28 to 33, they have some fixtures that are like striped out. So for Man City, they could potentially play Crystal Palace in 31, which would mean they wouldn't have a blank game week, 32 or 33. I don't know all the ins and outs of like when the fixtures could potentially be placed, but I'm guessing they're taking this information from like a Ben Crellin tweet or some of the guesswork that's done. I think we just don't know enough currently. Nothing's been announced, obviously, so a lot of this is just going to be guesswork, but tends to be educated guesswork. So if it's not going to be if it is going to be a blank game week here, that means that they will double in 32 or 33. Most likely. I don't know if it'll be pushed further. I don't know if they could do that just because, Man City may be further in the Champions League and FA Cup. So they might have to be between 31 and 33. That would be my guess. But let's assume that this is a blank. Crystal Palace players like Ismail Assar, for instance, I would have for Man United, Tottenham away, and Leeds, and then I would sell him because I have to sell. I can only bench 3 of the players, and I already have way too many players that are going to blank. I would sell him and then bring him back on a wild card, hypothetically, in 32. That's the general plan that I'm going with right now. And I haven't lost or gained any money on him, so it's not like it really even matters in terms of Gehi, Gabriel, and Haaland. I probably gained the most money on. Again, money is really not that important this season in FPL, but I want to pay attention to it in case things do start to get close. Like if Salah and Palmer really become options as they have in previous seasons, then maybe there is a situation where I have Haaland and Salah like I did for a lot of the season, or Haaland and Palmer, or Haaland and Saka, some combination. But right now there's just really no standout premium besides Haaland, who hasn't even really done that well and people are selling. So yeah, that's my rant on that. And then looking at the fixtures from a wider kind of lens, I know mine are going to stack up differently because my fixture difficulty rating takes into account there is going to be one subtracted fixture. This one obviously is assuming that there's going to be a game somewhere in here. So that's why Man City are ranked so highly. Brentford are up there. Crystal Palace are 3rd. Liverpool 4th for theirs. Oh, and also this is 6 game weeks instead of 5 like mine. So the calculus is going to be different slightly. But as we can see, a lot of the same players that I would be targeting, like a Brentford player like Dango, a Liverpool player like Verts, they do have pretty good fixtures. So I think overall, it's probably one of those situations where it wouldn't be a wrong move to go for one of those guys, but I don't think it would be a wrong move just to roll and kind of ignore it for now either, because Manchester United away is not bad. The one that I really would prefer to bench would be Chelsea against Arsenal away. So Enzo, he's been in terrible form. He really hasn't been that good since Palmer has been back. I thought there was a possibility that he would continue that good form when Palmer, how he was before Palmer came back into the lineup essentially. But yeah, his form has fallen off a cliff, and it's not like I've watched the matches. It's not like he's playing deeper or anything. It's just everything goes through Palmer now, and Enzo is more of just kind of like the B side in that attacking midfield setup. So yeah, if I had an extra transfer, I probably would sell Enzo, but the situation I'm in, it just doesn't make sense to sell him. I'd rather have a player than not have a player in 31. And I think Everton away, if I end up having to play him and I can't transfer him out, that's a fine fixture, because I'll move him on in wildcard anyway. So I'm okay with benching Enzo Fernandez for now. Bruno's definitely going to be playing, but yeah, it's just the situation I'm in, and probably many of you are in the same boat. So I wonder if you all are thinking about it as insanely as I am. Maybe I'm taking this too seriously and should be just like, whatever, if I have to take a hit, it's probably going to be fine. But yeah, I'm trying to do well, and I've just really been sucking in FPL this year. It's been really frustrating. So here we are back on my team's lineup. I think the most likely thing that will happen is Rice will go for Fernandez. I've got Fernandez on the mind. What can I say? Rice makes way for Florian Wirtz, and then oh yeah, that would still mean that Enzo has to play, because nothing has really changed. The only way that Enzo would be benched is if I went and got Krupi Jr. Let's put Rice back in, and let's just see what it looks like. Let's just try it on. I'm curious how the expected points anticipate Krupi Jr. to do in the next match. Not well. They're anticipating 1.24 points. That's not good. You know, I like this more. This is more sexy. And it's a transfer I have to make. Like, it's gonna be Krupi essentially, unless I go to like Raul. Yeah, we've made it clear that I cannot afford a decent forward, so I might as well just get a bad forward who might have some upside and is really cheap. The minutes aren't great, but at least it's better than 0 minutes and 31. I think this, yeah, I've actually totally completely 180'd. I think this is the move for my team. So for the audio only folks, I think the team will potentially look like this, although terms and conditions apply. Subject to change. But in goal, Dubravka against Brighton. Brentford. God, I'm so brain dead. Dubravka against Brentford. Gabriel against Chelsea. Gehi against Leeds. Senesi against Sunderland. Mbumo and Bruno against Crystal Palace. Sarr against Manchester United. Rice against Chelsea. Krupi Jr. against Sunderland. Holland against Leeds. And Thiago against Burnley. So let's roll with that. What would the captaincy look like? Because Leeds at home are not a joke. They have been so good. Let's just pull up the data. Let's take a look. Okay, we are on Understat. This is a website I would take paid promotion from if anybody's listening, which they're definitely not. I'm just looking at Understat. This is just the normal table, 1 through 20. Arsenal on top with 61 points. Why did I do that? Now let's go to home fixtures, and let's sort by expected goals away. So up at the top, the best defense at home is currently Arsenal, followed by Bournemouth, followed by Liverpool, Manchester United, Man City, Aston Villa, then Leeds. Leeds is the 6th best defense at home by the expected goals away. Against. What? Away. What am I talking about? By the expected goals against, Leeds are the 6th best team in the Premier League, although it is kind of the best way to have done this. It would have been like an average per game, but most of the teams have played 13 or 14. So yeah, you get what I'm trying to say. Leeds are good. They're no joke when they're playing at home. Compared to their away form, they're all the way down at the bottom. They're 18th or 17th. Wait, no, 18th. Yeah. The 18th worst defense away from home. So as you can see, it is big flip. Very good at home, not so good away. Would I bet against Holland going against Leeds, like away from home? I don't know. I'm a little unsure. I thought actually, given how good this was, I thought it was slightly better. I thought they were like in the top 4 for defenses at home, but yeah, I don't know. There's not a lot of good alternatives this week for captaincy. So let's just go back to the team and take a look at my options. Thiago against Burnley away. That could be a good one. Penalties. Burnley have been terrible defensively. And if we go back there, so playing at home, where's Burnley on this list? Yeah, Burnley are near the bottom regarding expected goals against at home. And they've only played 13, so they could even drop. If their expected goals against goes worse in one more match, then yeah, they would be the worst team at home defensively. So that's an option. Bruno Fernandes against Crystal Palace. They're playing at home. So let's take a look at where Crystal Palace are in terms of their expected goals against. Pretty good away from home. Only expected goals against is about 19 across the 13 fixtures they've played away from home. Crystal Palace are a good defensive team. They've definitely underperformed, but by the underlying data, they should be doing better. And I think generally speaking, their defense just has been pretty good this season. That's why players like Munoz, Lacroix, and Gehi before he moved were such popular defensive assets in FPL. Big part of that is because they are more likely to get clean sheets than pretty much any team below them on this list. So that's not a good option. Could I go for a defender? Sure. Gehi. Yeah, but then I would just go for Holland. Yeah, that wouldn't make sense. Gabriel against Chelsea at home? No. The real punt would be captaining Dubravka against Brentford. That would be hilarious. But no, I think the captaincy options are just, it has to be either Holland or Thiago. I may go for Thiago. I might have fun with it, honestly. Based on the underlying data, Burnley are one of the worst defenses at home. Leeds are one of the better defenses at home. Holland's a better striker than Thiago, but they're both on penalties. It's a tough call. Right at the moment, gut feeling is Thiago. But I do have some data to back this up. Let me take a look at my projected points across the next one fixture that I use for the free hit team, which we'll talk about next. I've probably been rambling enough. Okay, I made this a wee bit bigger, so we're back to the data, and this is not available on Airtable. I'd like to keep a little something for myself. So the projected points across the next one match, this is basically what I use to feed into the optimization algorithm to spit out the best team for the free hit team that I put out every week. And this is saying that the projected point total by the underlying data model for Thiago is 8.27. That's pretty darn good. I would probably take that if you were to get it. Surprisingly, Holland is not very high up on the list, and that's because Leeds playing at home are quite a good defense. So on the same metric, by the underlying data, Holland is projected to get about 6 points, so a 2-point differential between him and Thiago. And there are many players above Holland, actually. Salah, actually even with him. Senesi even would potentially be a better or good option. Shada, Dango, Vandenberg, Collins. Thiago's at the top. I think especially if I don't go for Dango, maybe it would be fun to go for Thiago just this once as a captaincy option. And I'm sure this is not like rocket science. Like I'm overthinking it obviously, but most people will probably be picking Haaland. I think this is a good opportunity to go against that. And while Haaland is probably going to get a hat trick, I could see him getting another blank. He hasn't been playing very well recently. Thiago's been playing well, but he hasn't been putting it away. That's kind of the trade-off there. Would I go for anybody else? Bruno Fernandes, if we're looking at this projected point tally, he's projected to get about 5.5 points. Same with Verts. Ekitike about 6, Virgil about 6. I'm not going to be able to get those guys, unfortunately. So I think really it is between Thiago and Haaland, and according to the model, Senesi. But I think I'm going to go with Thiago. I think that's my pick. Let's take a look at the free hit team with what the algorithm came up with, because I know it's a weird week. Just bear with me. And here is what the algorithm came up with. On paper, I hate it. I don't think this is a good team. I'm definitely like, I tend to like not tinker too much with what the algorithm puts out for a team, and then I just kind of roll with it. This team I'm probably going to tinker a lot with. So this is what the algorithm came up with. That's not my final free hit team. I'll clip up my final team and put it on the Discord. That link's always in the description. But I'm going to make some adjustments. This was the highest scoring team by the optimization algorithm, and it currently has Martinez in goal, Virgil van Dijk and Konate in defense, Vandenberg and, excuse me, I drank too much seltzer, Vandenberg and Senesi, literally burping into the mic. How professional is that? Let me just scratch all that. Martinez, Virgil, Vandenberg, Senesi, Konate. That makes up the back 5 with the goalkeeper. Midfield with Salah, Dango, Bruno Fernandes, and Rogers. And the forward line, Watkins and Thiago. So as you can see, the glaring omission, no Haaland, no City players whatsoever. And because we have double Liverpool defense, that means that we can't have Ekitike in there, which I feel like we should as well. So let me cut, and then I'll come back when I make some more decisions and try to finagle the team a bit, because I hate this team and it's not going to do well on the free hit competition, which it doesn't really matter if I win or lose, but I gotta maintain some respect here. So let me come out with a better team, or a team that I think will do better and hopefully outperform the algorithm, and then hopefully outperform the official FPL scout team. Okay, thunk about it enough, and I think this is the team. So updated team, that is, I'm locking in, even though Verts is yellow flagged, might not play. Even if he does, he might get taken off early, but I just think West Ham at home is too good of a fixture to turn down, and I can't afford Salah. So, and I don't want to go for Gakpo. I feel like that's boring. So this is the team going triple Bournemouth defense. That's a risk, but I like it from a statistical standpoint. I think it's probably the best on paper, the best triple up on paper, that is. So I'm going with Petrovic in goal. Virgil van Dijk is staying. Malik Chia against Everton at home is subbed in for, I can't remember who else was in the defense, but alongside him, Senesi and Hill. So we've got 3 Bournemouth defenders, which means I don't have like a Ryan or an Evan Nielsen or a Kruby Jr., but I think that's fine. I think Bournemouth have been pretty good by the underlying data defensively, just haven't been able to keep as many clean sheets. We'll see if they can get one against Sunderland at home. In the midfield, I'm playing only 3 in the midfield because, spoiler alert for people just listening to the audio only, Ekitike is in. So in the midfield, it's going to be Verts, Dango, and Bruno. And then forward line is Ekitike, Haaland, and Thiago. I'm captaining Thiago. I'm actually going to remember to captain a player on my free hit team this week. So that's going to be the team. I'm going to lock it in, change the formation slightly, changed probably 3 or 4 players, but I think overall this is much better. And while I think Salah is definitely better than Verts, I think you still get a pretty high potential with Ekitike, and Holland is just consistent. It would be hard to bet against him in general. I probably won't captain him this week, but to not have him in the team is kind of rough. So I'm going to snip up this team, throw it on the Discord for transparency. And if my team loses against the official FPL Scout team, the top point scorer of the mini league will get $10 sent their way. And that's how the competition works. And I think that's all I have for the episode. This is probably a long one because I've just rambled a whole lot. And hopefully that helped you make a decision, because it certainly did not help me make a decision. And that was a flawless transition straight to the just me camera. But we're running right into the outro because I've run out of things to say. And basically, I just want to wrap this up by saying good luck with Gameweek 27. What are we on now? Oh my God, we're in 28. Jesus, time is flying. Good luck with Gameweek 28. I hope I do better than you, but as we've seen historically, I probably will do worse than you, especially recently. I've done terrible. So good luck. I'm probably going to need it more. I'll see you next week after the Gameweek 28 wraps up, and then we'll start planning ahead for Gameweek 29, and hopefully we'll have some more information about the blanks and the doubles. So that would be some good old content to send your way if we can get the info. For now, I'll see you next time. Later.